Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our today's session. My name is Dr. Fakara Selassie Mogas. Most of you are familiar with me, especially the Ethiopian candidates. And today I have, as usual, I have an esteemed guest with me, Dr. Miriam Parker. I am 100% sure all of you know her by now because we have been doing this kind of sessions multiple times over the years. And Dr. Miriam Parker is an attending physician who has been practicing in Atlanta for more than 25 years, and she has been a program director in internal medicine residency program in Atlanta Medical Center for over 2 decades, almost 25 years. And now she is providing a mentorship and guidance service over the past, I believe, 2 years, right, Dr. Parker?
3.
Almost 3 years. Yes, 3 years on ERAS application, fellowship residency applications, in US residency and fellowship applications. So I am always happy to have you back here, Dr. Parker. So today we'll be focusing on updates related to the ERAS 2027 application and some of the quality improvement one should do when their ERAS application will be addressed. So without further ado, I will give you the floor to you, Dr. Parker, so you can introduce yourself further and we can go directly to our discussion. Thank you so much.
Sure. Well, thanks again for inviting me. I'm happy to be here, and it's obviously the season. Tis the season, the ERAS personal statement, get your application ready season. So when Dr. Moses and I were talking, I thought that one of the maybe most helpful things at this point would be to talk sort of about how to have a quality improvement of your personal statement and your ERAS application, because as I'm doing this now, and like I've done every year, I see lots of things that could be better about people's applications. And so I started to think more about this. And so it's really kind of like a PDSA cycle for your for your residency application. I'm going to try to today, answer some questions about some of the, I think, mistakes or the opportunities that are missed in this process, and trying to hopefully trying to give you a little better idea of what those opportunities are and how you might leverage, your own experiences, your own wisdom, for the betterment of your application. So that's really it. I don't have anything else to say, really, by way of any further introduction.
That is very beautiful, Dr. Parker. It's always a pleasure to have you because, most of, the Ethiopian candidates, as well as international candidates from other nations as well, they send me inboxes every now and then on how helpful whatever information you are passing here has been over the years. And I believe today's discussion would also be very, very helpful to many. So the first question I have for you is if you can outline what is the basic difference in terms of, crafting a personal statement versus ERAS application is, because not so many people had the privilege of writing personal statements in the past, and so many people may not have an idea on how they should craft their personal statement. So I will ask you specific questions related to personal statement and ERAS application, but if you can start by outlining the difference between the two, that would be great. Thank you.
Sure. So I do think that when individuals approach this process, it's really probably best to really think of the two things as separate but complementary. They're two very, very important parts of your application. Obviously, your letters of recommendation and other aspects are important as well. But I believe that these are really very critical parts of your application. The personal statement is what it says it is. It's a personal statement. It should be personal about you. It is your opportunity to sort of describe your motivation as to why that specialty, why are you doing this now? It allows you to express a little bit about your thinking, your thought process about maybe how you approach medicine, how you approach your patients, how you approach challenges. It gives you an opportunity to talk about your growth, to enumerate, not enumerate, to show your professional qualities, And in the end, really, you want to come forward in your personal statement as someone that program director would like to get to know, feels like just from reading that you might be someone that they would really trust with their patients, would trust you as a resident. And of course, they're going to find out more of that if they select you for an interview. But the point of the personal statement, the point of the ERAS application is getting to the point so that you can get that interview and get before them and present yourself in a fuller way. The ERAS application, that's very different, and we'll sort of break it down into, I think we'll start talking about personal statement first and then maybe ERAS application in more depth later. But the ERAS application is really a demonstration of your professionalism. And when I say professionalism, I mean your professional competencies. That's really what I mean. And it requires that you have a pretty broad understanding of what I mean by that, because I think sometimes that's really not that well understood. I may have said this in a previous webinar. I'm sure that I probably did, but I will repeat it again. And that is that when we're really thinking about professionalism in medicine, we're thinking about all those things that we're called upon as physicians to do, to communicate well with our patients, with our colleagues, with the media, with the families of our colleagues. We're called upon to demonstrate critical judgment and critical thinking and problem solving. We're required to show empathy towards our patients and compassion, to treat people with respect, to treat individuals with dignity. We learn about dependability and reliability and resilience and adaptability, all parts of really being a professional. Those are professional competencies. And then there are others like self-reflection, which is a professional competency, understanding our shortcomings, understanding our strengths, being able to look back at things and take account, hold ourselves to account, hold others to account, but really the process of self-reflection and continuous learning. And then there are ethical responsibilities that come with being a physician. Things like protecting patients' privacy, like ensuring that that we help.
Unknown caller.
That we treat all the patients that we come into contact with equally. So there are many aspects of professionalism and professionalism competencies, and those are the things that really are important that get conveyed in your ERAS application. So I think of that personal statement is much more personal. It's about who you are, your motivations, kind of what's got you here, why you're applying for this incredible opportunity. And then your ERAS application is really backing up some of those things that you're going to need to have, the attributes, the competencies that you're going to need to have to really be able to effectively do that job of resident and a physician in this country.
You have beautifully outlined what the personal statement as well as ERAS application should be composed of. Now, let's focus a little bit on each of them in separate. So personal statement, when people are writing personal statement, most of us tend to make mistakes. So what are the common mistakes which one might make when they are crafting their personal statement? And what are the things we need to be careful not to include in the personal statement? And what are the things which we make sure that we are including in our personal statement? And in that regard, you can also talk about, in this era of AI and other multiple technology assisted sort of personal statement crafting and everything. Should we do it? Shouldn't we do it? If we have to do it, how can we best utilize those services? These kind of things you can include in your answer. Thank you so much again.
Okay, well, it sounds like I got my work cut out for me, but yes, I think those are very important things to bring up. When there's obviously many things that people can do well, and there are things that people can maybe not do so well when they're writing their personal statements. And I do appreciate that for many people, this is a new experience. I mean, there are many, many international medical graduates who have told me straight out, I've never had to write a statement like this. It's completely new for me. So it is something that I would expect that people have a lot of questions about. They don't really know how to do it. There isn't one right way. I will say that from the get-go. And there's no one formulaic way that I can tell you that you have to do these things. And I think that's maybe the mistake that some people get caught up in. But if we just step back for a second, if you just step back and you think about your personal statement, I said that really what I want to understand by the end of it is a little bit about who you are and what your motivations are. So if you take it from the back end and you think like, well, what should the person who's reading this get by the end of it? I think that actually really helps you. A lot of people tend to use it as an autobiographical statement. You know, they start out maybe in high school, some people, maybe in college, maybe medical school, and they or sometimes, you know, a childhood experience that they had. That's very common, a childhood experience that they had with someone ill, with a death, with an illness, either themselves, a friend, a parent, something, and then they move forward. That is one way to do things, but it is surely not the only way to do things. You really don't have enough time to tell your autobiography in a page. And if you do, it's really going to be going from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, to the next, and just sort of a series of events that happened to you, but not necessarily things that had changed you, that motivated you, that tell me why you're here before me today applying for residency. So I would say that one of the first mistakes I see is people trying to tell their entire story. They want to get all of it in, and that's just not possible. One of the things that I can tell you is that, you know, it really depends on where you are in your life. So if you're someone who is still in medical school and you're in your last year of medical school, or you're, you know, in your case, I guess you're in your internship here and you're applying for residency, that's a very different situation than someone who has completed medical school, has worked as a GP, has maybe had some academic positions, has taken care of lots of patients, has done some teaching, has done, you know, maybe had a family, started a family. That's a very different circumstance than someone who is straight out of medical school. So someone in medical school may indeed write about things that happened in high school or college because that is sort of what is immediate to them. But beginning when you're, you know, 30 years old and you've had life experiences, beginning when you're in high school probably isn't the best use of your time or the space that you have available to you. It's probably better to start, you know, with a more recent experience that starts to begin to tell me who you are now, not who you were when you were 5 years old. So I think the autobiographical thing has to be kept into understanding that the reason that you would go through some autobiographical stuff, which everybody does in a way, is that it has to lead me to a persuasive argument about why you're here, who you are, but not just a series of things that you did. Okay, that would be the first thing that I would say. So you don't have to tell me every part of your journey. You don't have enough time. You just don't have enough time. The other thing that I want to tell you is to be honest about your journey, you know, and let me backtrack for a second, because I had this come up with me probably 3 times in the last week. Every year I get people who change specialty. You know, they started out as a surgeon and then they are now looking at doing something else, or they started out as an OB. I had someone last week as an OB, and now they're going to pursue family medicine or pediatrics. And oftentimes people start their stories and say things like, well, you know, I really always wanted to do family medicine, but something, you know, I always wanted to do internal medicine, but my country needed me for surgery. And therefore I ended up being a surgeon because of, you know, some of the sponsorship issues and stuff like that occur in countries where you're sponsored for a given residency. And so the person creates this narrative that they really sort of have been doing something that wasn't really their choice. And now that they come to this country, now they're going to finally have the choice that they really want to have, and they're going to make that choice. And I would tell you, I don't think that's a good way to do your narrative. I think it is much better to say, you know, after I finished my internship here, I was excited to take on a residency position as a surgeon, as an OBGYN. At the time, whatever, it was the right thing for me. I had enjoyed this, I had enjoyed that. You know, you enjoyed it, you took on that role. You can always make the argument for certain reasons that you'll explain as to why you're changing now. But you should, you know, deliver your choice, the choice that you made, as a choice that you made at that time, that it was a good choice for you, that you grew out of it, that you learned things out of it. And there are things, many things that you learned that you are taking with you and that are portable. Don't try to bury your history. It never works to your advantage. I guess I'm being a little long-winded here, but that's really what I mean. Don't bury your history. There's oftentimes some of the best lines in your history that you destroy if you don't own it. You know? So that would be the first thing that I would say. You don't want to be put on the defensive. You're not supposed to defend your journey. You're supposed to talk about your journey as if it's an evolution and show how you grew during that period of time. And many of you have these kinds of stories. I know you do. Okay, let me talk a little bit about the AI stuff. I call it, I've tried to be nice about it these days. I call it AI creep, you know. It just kind of, before you know it, it's there. Last year was my first introduction to what I would say was like a torrential rain of AI onto people's personal statements. So maybe this year I got so used to it that it's not so striking anymore. But I do not think that AI serves you very well. I understand how it happens. You write an essay, you're not sure about certain transitions, you want to say things better, it sounds a little bit odd, doesn't sound polished, so people go to whatever their favorite AI website is. They use that. They start out with just a few words here and there, and then before you know it, it's been transformed into an essay that sounds like everyone else's. And I really mean that. It sounds like everyone else's. The same words, the same phrases, the same sentence structure, the same em dashes. It's all the same. And it will not distinguish you in any way from one of your peers. It will not. It will not help you. You know, we get things like, this experience taught me the importance of patient-centered care, teamwork, compassion, and resilience. That's typical. This thing showed me. So the person gives me an experience. They tell me not very much about the experience, and then they conclude, and therefore, la-di-da-di-da-di-da. That is the absolute way that AI will write your paper for you. And it really tells me nothing, because it's not by showing me who you are. You're just telling me, oh, I care about patient-centered care. Oh, I'm a compassionate person. But better yet, for you to tell me a story in the way that you talk about a patient, I'll know that you're compassionate. In the way that you talk about an experience, I'll know that you're resilient. You don't have to say those words. In fact, it really cheapens it when you just put the words out there. I could tell you that I'm absolutely hilarious and that I have an amazing sense of humor, which my son tells me all the time that I distinctly do not. But I could tell you that. You know, but maybe when I would tell a story or tell a joke, you would realize that Dr. Parker isn't really that good at that. But I could tell you anything. So just don't tell people things, show them things in your essay. And AI does not show anything. It just tells things. It also, remember, there's all this language, and as soon as we see it, we know it. Ignited my passion, sparked my interest, solidified my desire, cemented my decision, reinforced my commitment. It's not that any of these are wrong. It's just that we've seen them so many times lately that they become boring, and they become the language of AI. And I grant you that if you see this writing a lot, even if you don't use AI, some of this stuff creeps into your own language on its own because it's become so much a part of what we see. So you have to guard against it. I always tell people, give me your personal statement raw. Give it to me with the misspellings and the bad punctuation and whatever, but give it to me from your heart, and then we can work on it. It's much more fun to do that than it is to try to take out the AI once you put it in. Okay, so I think that would be my biggest take. Don't use it. Try not to use it. If you use it, be well aware. Look for these kinds of constant things that are in AI. Now, you know, some people, they have AI write their paper, and then they go to another website or on the same AI website, and they say, now humanize my paper. This happens. It still doesn't really do a great job. With everybody who has great stories, you really don't need to do this. You really don't. So that would be my second really thing about personal statement. And of course, this goes to you for your ERAS application, right? Same thing, because people use that probably, maybe sometimes even worse. I would tell you that choosing the stories that you select are really important. You don't want to choose a lot of stories. I have some people, every paragraph starts with a new patient story. No, don't do that. One story, maybe two stories, but it is not a collection of stories. It is about you. It is about, yes, you can use a story to show, you know, how you interacted with the patient, to try to extract some meaning from it, but it should not be a collection of every paragraph with a new patient story. It just doesn't work well. One well-developed story that serves as an anchor, serves as a hook, is really, really effective. And the more you try to do that, I think it just dilutes the energy, and it dilutes the benefit of that first story. So one or two carefully chosen stories, if you're going to tell them in the course of your personal statement. Again, I would emphasize don't tell me what happened. Tell me how that happened, how whatever happened, you know, show me how it changed you. Show me a reflective side of you. It should be reflections, lots of reflections in here. But you don't start everything with, and so I learned, and so the greatest takeaway was, or stuff like that. You have to be a little bit more crafty about how you indicate to your reader what you've learned. But you definitely want to demonstrate that you have insight from these experiences, that you gain perspective, that you've grown from these experiences. Because oftentimes that personal statement encompasses 10 years of your life, right? It could be 10 years of your life, and you haven't grown in those 10 years. Of course you have. So many things have happened that will make you a better doctor. You have to show people that. Don't tell them, show them why that is. In the end, I would just tell you, when you finish your personal statement, you put it aside, and then you read it at the end, and you say to yourself, if I was a program director reviewing this, is this someone that I think I could trust? Is this someone that if I called them at 2 a.m, or would they call me at 2 a.m. if they thought there was a problem with the patient? Is this someone who seems to know their limitations? But it's really about trust. It's about trust in the end. So that's what I would say about personal statements. Okay, so questions.
So probably, like, you know, the personal statement is the most important one, right? So since you have been working as a program director for more than 2 decades, so almost 25 years. So what is that you look in the personal statements of candidates? Because you may receive 3,000, 4,000 applications in a year. So how does the selection process goes? Is it like, you know, mainly at the beginning, of course, certain programs use different criteria to kind of shortlist candidates. But after you shortlisted your candidates, do you focus on personal statements or any other attributes in the selection process just to invite people into the residency application interview?
Well, there are obviously lots of different programs will do different things, right? I mean, I think, like, for instance, the letters of recommendation are incredibly important, in that whole process, where they actually fall in. I mean, I tended to look at those first before I looked at other things. I think a personal statement can help you a lot. If it's well written, it's well conceived, it tells me stuff about you, and it makes you a more attractive candidate. I think that it can hurt you if it sounds very formulaic, if it tells me nothing about you, and it doesn't advance your application. After I read it, I sort of, I'm left with your scores and your letters, and this essay doesn't really excite me. And at the worst, I think, if it's really poorly done and it generates certain feelings in the program director, it could be an exclusionary thing. But I think most of the time it can help you, or it can just be neutral. But who wants a neutral anything in their application? I think it's, these applications are all about building things. And so you don't want to squander an opportunity to have a personal statement where somebody says, gosh, because I've seen it before. I've had personal statements where the person had other things that were really exclusionary almost. And I read a personal statement and I said, I'd like to meet that person, because it was so compelling. Now that's a rare occurrence, but there are definitely personal statements that are absolutely wonderful. They stand out from others, and they stand out because they're fresh, they're unique. You feel like the person really told you something about themselves. You feel like you want to sit down and have a cup of coffee with them and get to know them better. And you really are thinking, this is a person I'd want in my residency class.
Okay. So it could be a deal breaker in that sense. The other question I have is, some people, they send you like a personal statement 2-page long. No. So that's also a common mistake, I think, because while trying to include everything in the personal statement, some people are tempted to include every little aspect of their past, their experiences, and everything. So they end up writing a personal statement as long as 2 pages, 3 pages. So what do you say about that? What limit advises? I mean, how long should it be, or how short should it be?
Okay, so I've had people send me 5-page long personal statements because they couldn't abandon anything. Everything was equally important to them. Every little detail, every paper, everything. That actually says something about that applicant up front, right? So think about it. The personal statement it shows your selective abilities too. No one believes that these are the only things that have happened to you, but they must be on one page, one single page of paper. That's it. No one really wants to read anything more. No one wants to read any more. I have occasionally let a candidate do more. And I'll tell you, those were specific situations where candidates had a problem, had a record where they had gotten kicked out of a program before, something like that, and they needed to explain carefully what had happened. And for those people, I will almost always suggest that it's fine if they go over. But the average individual, 99.9% of people who don't fit into that weird criteria, which you don't want to be in, that club, 1 page. And, some people will say, well, it's a couple sentences over. And to that I say, well, you have to select. You have to select it, and you can cut down. And that's one of the things I can do. I will slash and burn parts of your essay because I'm not personally attached to it. Having said all that, I would say the way that I think you can one helps themselves with that is that you read every sentence one by one when you're having a problem like that. And you say, does this sentence tell them anything really about me? And if it doesn't, it's a candidate for getting cut out. But 1 page, you're right. 1 page. How did I miss that? But 1 page.
1 page, even 1 page, if it is from top to bottom, it's kind of discouraging. So I would say maybe limiting themselves, you know, in terms of word count, maybe between 300 to 500? What do you think? I mean, like, you know.
I would say, I mean, I usually encourage them that, you know, it should be close to a full page. It should be paragraphs. I don't want to see really, really long paragraphs because it's hard to read that, right? As a reader, you want something that's easy. You want to make it easier on the program director. I always like them personally when the first, like the hook, the first part is not very long because it is an introduction to you. And it usually doesn't form the basis for everything. And then maybe, you know, 4 or 5 short paragraphs. You know, when there's paragraphs, there's spacing. And so it does give the person an opportunity to breathe. But if it's one long or 2 long paragraphs, I tell you, you feel like you got to come up for air as the program director. You don't want to read it. You don't want to read it.
Yes, yes. Thank you so much, Dr. Parker. Those are very valuable informations, and I think candidates for the upcoming ERAS application, I think you are paying attention to that. So I think we can go to the ERAS application and the common mistakes which people do when they are crafting their ERAS application. They are following a format because, as far as I remember, there is, like, you know, for education, work experience, research experience, there are categories. You auto-populate, and then eventually it generates an application as well as personal. A personal statement is something else, but ERAS application works that way. But what are the most common mistakes people do when they are just completing the ERAS application?
So I would say that the first thing that I see is when people see the ERAS application as they see every experience as sort of a job description. They give you the things that they did, just the things that they did. I did this, 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 and this, and then I did this, 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 and this, and then I did this, this. I saw 10 to 15 patients a day, and I read, you know, so many of this, and frankly, it's just boring. It's boring, and it doesn't tell me anything about you. It you know, experiences that are written as if they're a job description as to what you did. You know how you craft, when you craft a resume for a job, you put the title on, and then you try to list you maybe a sentence, 2 sentences about the context, and then you list your accomplishments and the things that you did. That is the standard process for applications for a resume for a job. It is not. This is not a resume. It is a resume for a job in a way, but it's a different kind of resume. And that's one of the reasons why I don't like bullet points, because I think it encourages that kind of thing. It doesn't encourage reflection. So people who work with me will know that when people do their ERAS applications and their ERAS experiences, I really like them to write, you know, 2 or 3 sentences about the context, so I know where the experience occurred, you know, a little bit about it. And then it's more of a reflection. What, you know, what did this, why did you pick this experience as one of the experiences? For instance, somebody writing about their internship year, they'll say, you know, I did an internship year at, you know, X hospital. It was a large regional hospital located in, you know, such and such a city. And I rotated through, you know, surgery, OB-GYN, pediatrics, internal medicine, you know, each one for 4 months. And then I did additionally 2 weeks on this and 2 weeks on that. I admitted so many patients a day. I discharged so many patients. I rounded with my attendings. I wrote notes. I presented at conferences, all these things. You know, I'm like, everybody knows what an internship is. Just tell them where you did your internship. Tell them that you provided comprehensive care in the inpatient and the outpatient setting to patients in internal medicine or patients in internal medicine, pediatric surgery, and OB, if it was one of these rotating internships, and be done with it. Everybody knows what you did. The other thing is people like to list all of their procedures that they did. They list and they tell me they did NG tubes and they put in urinary catheters. Nobody cares. Really, nobody cares. You know, you can say, I had the opportunity to gain proficiency in several common procedures, such as, if you want to do that. But that's it. You know, procedures can be learned and taught. Far better is to reserve some of those lines that you would otherwise be putting all these things, and to write about some of the important things that you learned during that period. Okay, so it's not just a job description, it's a job or an experience that you had. And I would like to know from that what it meant to you. Why did it even bother to show up on your ERAS application?
I
So
think
that
that's very important. Yeah, it's very important because, sometimes we are not selective, and we will be overwhelming the application with so much of, unnecessary information, and then that distracts us. I think whoever is reviewing our application from going into the most important ones. So I think we need to be selective, like you mentioned, and the redundancies has to be avoided, and we need to focus on the most important things. Actually, on those experiences which would make us look like a better candidate compared to the rest, compared to the pack. So
yeah.
are very nice things. Okay. Is there any other thing which you have noticed, the past 3 years you have been working with many applicants, you have been helping so many people crafting their applications. So not only that, you have been a program director for the past 25 years. So over the years, the past 28 years, I would say you have seen these common mistakes. So if there is any other thing you have noticed in the past and which you would like to outline in terms of, ERAS application as well as personal, or any other component of the application for that matter, you can go ahead.
Well, I would say that what a lot of people do when they do their ERAS applications is that they write their experience, whether they write it or they write it in bullet points or whatever they do. And then they go about trying to figure out what key characteristic the writing that they did is associated with. I tell people that is the wrong way to go about doing it. You should sit down before you even start your application, and you should look at the sort of experiences that are available to you. Don't just restrict yourself in medicine either. You can think about all sorts of other things that you've done. It may be, you had a startup that you were involved in. Maybe you were a tutor. Maybe you drove an Uber. Maybe you had a cooking business on the side because times were hard economically and you had to figure out something else. Maybe you played chess. I've had people write about scuba diving. Indian dance. Well, not Ethiopians doing Indian dance. I don't think I would find that, but and so put out like all this stuff out there and then think about it and say to yourself, okay, I have these 10 key characteristics, the 10 competencies, the 10 areas of professionalism that I have to write about. I have this experience in front of me. Which one of these competencies do I think I can write most convincingly about using this experience? It changes the way that you think about it. It's a lot more fun, and it really demonstrates who you are. Now, any experience that you have can probably be looked at from various perspectives. I mean, take internship year, right? Internship year. So internship year is you could choose resilience and adaptability to discuss your internship year. You could use critical thinking to discuss your internship year, how much you learned about problem solving and critical thinking. You could use communication skills. You could use teamwork and leadership, but it depends on how you write about it. You don't just write about it and then try to, in the end, pick something that seems like, well, okay, maybe it goes along with it. Much stronger if you plan it out ahead. And I was thinking about it, that whole process of PDSA cycles, right? You guys know about PDSA cycles, right? What's the first P stand for? Plan. Plan what you're going to write about, then write about it, right? The first things, those are the first things that you're going to do. Then you're going to study what you did, and you're going to try to figure out, after I did this achieve the effect I wanted? Does this look like an individual that has these competencies? Are these the kind of competencies that a pediatrics program would want? Are these the competencies that I think a surgical program would want? Now, granted, everybody wants professional competencies, but I can tell you, like a surgery program, they want to know that you're reliable and dependable. They want to know that you have teamwork and leadership experience. That's very important to them. I had a pediatric application the other day that did not, believe it or not, have the competency of empathy and compassion in it. Not that this person wasn't empathetic and compassionate. They just you know, they were just writing their stuff and they weren't thinking about which of these attributes, which of these qualities would be really important for that particular specialty, right? So PDSA, you know, plan, do, and then study, and then, you know, the ACT, right? ACT is like you either say, okay, this is a good experience, I'm going to keep it, or you decide that you're going to reject it, or you revise it in some way. But that's what it's about.
Yeah, I think that is a key, because most of us, we have a tendency to start doing something without even thinking and planning. And then once we mess up, we come back and it doesn't fit, you know, because, you know, if you start crafting your application for so many hours and you go back and there is nothing you can associate that description with, then it's a waste of time and energy. So I think, you know, we need to really figure out what kind of characteristic or what sort of experience goes with what kind of attribute or quality, which is supposed to be reflected in the application. So I think planning is very important before starting to do things. So I think that's really valuable, Dr. Parker. Thank you so much. So I think I will ask you in the next few minutes, I will ask you very short answer kind of questions, and you can give us, you know, to the point kind of answers, because like, you know, these things, they keep coming every year, because like new candidates are coming every year. Some of them, they don't have the courage, or I don't know, they didn't review the previous year videos, so they always come and ask the same question.
That's okay.
We have answered those questions repeatedly, but like, you know, some people, you know, they just come and ask those questions. So one of the questions I would like to ask you is about letter of recommendation, because so many people ask for letter of recommendations. Personally, they ask me. So what I say to them is, if you have worked with me in some sort of capacity, I'm willing to help you. But if I have zero relationship with you in the past, and if we have never crossed paths, then it is not ethical, it's not fair, it's cheating, so I'm not going to do it. So this is my principle. I have been trying to be true to myself, and whoever is like listening this conversation, I want you to pay attention to that again. So don't come up with questions like that if you have never worked with me, or don't approach any person if you have never worked with them. That is not fair. That's not also appropriate. So who should write letter of recommendations? Is it a must to get a letter of recommendation from a US-based physician? So people assume it's a must to get a letter from a US-based, US practicing physician. So can you say something about that? Some sort of reassurance to our viewers?
So what I would say is the quality of the letter is really critical, right? And so, as was sort of mentioned, if you haven't worked with an individual, or you worked very peripherally with someone, they're probably not going to be able to discuss much in a letter. It's going to be a generic type of letter, and it's really easy to read between the lines with those letters. Getting letters from individuals from the United States. Obviously, it's a good thing to have letters from the United States if you have individuals that you can get letters from who know you. Now, there's two ways they can know you. One would be someone, let's say there's someone who's a couple years ahead of you who, when you were a medical student, was one of your attendings or one of the fellows where you were, you were working, or you were not working, one of your rotations, and you spent a month on medicine with that individual, and you feel very comfortable that they know you well. That would be someone that you could approach if they were in this country now and say, I know we worked together in my last year of medical school. Reach out to them and see whether or not, based on that experience, they would be willing to write you a letter. And then you might give them some information about what you've been up to. But if it is someone that is just here that you do not know at all, there's no point in that. And it's really wrong. Now, there are people who will write those letters, and we see them. I saw one Ethiopian who, I don't know how many letters he's written at this point. He was already in the hundreds. I'm sure he's probably in the thousands by now. But, he felt compelled to help every Ethiopian that he could. And I get that. But, we used to just discard all his letters because they were a joke. I mean, he didn't know these people. He was just writing on, and everybody was terrific. Everybody was wonderful, and he hadn't really worked with anyone. So they won't really help you. I would concentrate on getting letters from people who know you well. Now, if you can work while you're in Ethiopia, if you can work with individuals who come to Ethiopia from other countries, who come from the United States and are doing mission work here, who work with Heart Attack Ethiopia, who come to the Axon Neurology Center and this, that, and the other things that are available to me, by all means, if you can, get yourself somehow connected, and see whether or not, after actually working with them, if you're offered an opportunity, and I don't mean one day, I mean like an opportunity to work with them over a 1, 2, 3 week period of time, maybe they would be willing then to write a letter for you. But don't assume that anybody should write you a letter. It's really, it's something that you have to ask of someone. And I wouldn't ask people who don't know you well, because they cannot write good letters for you. I don't know if is that, I mean,
Yes,
program director, you have to write letters. Anybody that applied in my program for fellowship, it is a responsibility of me to write. Now, I felt like I had good residents because I trained them. So it would have been a very bad reflection if I couldn't write a good fellowship letter for a resident of mine. But there were people that had stellar letters, and there were people that had, very good, but not the best letters.
Yes, because it's kind of a testimony, right? Letter of recommendation is, in another words, it's a testimony about that person. And whoever is writing a testimony about someone should know that person in detail, at a very good detail. Otherwise, like you mentioned, it's just, you write it just for the sake of writing it, and it's not going to help at the other end. And also it hurts the reputation of the individual who is writing, because that single individual, I'm sure it is not me, because you haven't been there when I started writing letters. And I haven't written so much of a letter. I have written a lot of letters to people, but those individuals has worked with me when I was in Ethiopia. But, the fresh graduates, candidates from other, universities, like, outside of Addis Ababa University, there is no way I can write a letter as simple as that. So it's a very good example. It's a good scenario here. So just focus on those people who are working with you. It could be, if you can get someone in the US, well and good. If not, just focus on those individuals. Whoever has worked with you should write a letter. They shouldn't necessarily be also medical professionals, I would say, right? Because, someone was telling me, I don't know whether it was you or somebody else who told me this story. This guy worked with one individual to repair something in his home, and that person wrote a letter about this guy when he applied for residency. And that was interesting. And that letter of recommendation was drawing an attention of everyone who sees that letter, because how come this person wrote this letter to someone applying for residency? You know what I mean? So some people would be curious, and if the letter is excellent, then it can help you one way or another. I believe in that way.
Yeah, I mean, that would be a curiosity. Somebody asked me the other day, they were working in a telemetry unit, and somebody here in the States, and their boss in the telemetry unit was a nurse. And I said, can they write them a letter? And I said, I don't think that's a good idea. Because, is there somebody in that, is there somebody who's her boss? Is there someone who's over the telemetry unit, who's a cardiologist, that maybe could talk to her and confer with her, and then feel comfortable writing something for you? But I think you have to be careful about who you get letters from. I mean, it used to be in this country that people would get letters from their politicians. I mean, I can't imagine that now, but but they would get letters from all these crazy kind of sources. And I think, physicians are they're pretty conservative, and they want to see, you can get stuff from a PhD, for sure. If you've been a master's prepared person, I mean, if you've been working in research, like, of course you can get that letter. They're not going to talk about your medical skills. They're going to talk about all these other attributes, how you were conscientious in your research and meticulous and detail oriented and all those kinds of things. They're going to stay in their lane, and they're going to do for you what they can, and they can do a great job for you. I will tell you, I do advise people before if someone agrees to write a letter for you, I do think it's helpful for you to craft some paragraphs about yourself to send them, especially if it's been a while since you've worked with them. You might want to, remind them when you worked with them. Maybe some of the patients, if you remember, and you probably will, and I can assure you they won't, some of the patients, maybe a particular patient that was interesting that you took care of with them. Or for instance, you might say, during the period of time I worked with you, these were the things that I really took away from that rotation. So you may sort of show self-reflection, on what you learned during that experience. They can use those then in the letter without copy pasting, but they can use that to make it a stronger letter. Those are just some thoughts, but I do think it's helpful to instruct people a little bit and help them write a letter, not write it for them, but help them write a letter.
That is beautiful, Dr. Parker. Thank you so much. I'm sure this is going to help a lot of our candidates here. And we have about 29 people watching on LinkedIn, 21 people on YouTube. So almost about 50 people are watching this session right now. I think they will find it very informative. So we have a couple of minutes remaining. So I will ask you 1 or 2 questions. And then finally, I would like you to outline what you have been doing over the past 3 years, and especially the success story of your mentorship service you are offering to people. And if you can say a few words about the package you are offering, that would be very, very helpful. So in terms of research and observership, you can answer them together, because people freak out about, research experience, and they feel they need some sort of research experience. I know, I get it, it helps. But is it really a deal breaker for an applicant, or do they have it? Is it a must? And the other one is in terms of observership, they always ask if tele-observership would be helpful, because so many international graduates are not getting visa to come to the US to get like an actual in-person observership experiences. So if you can touch on this, if you can say a few words about these 2 important aspects of the application, that would be great. And then we can go ahead and talk about your services and the package you are offering, and the experiences from previous years.
Okay, so the observership thing, the virtual stuff, I think it's really a mixed bag. I think there are a few potential observerships that I've seen people do that are virtual, that are helpful to them. Many of them they can't get a letter from. So it's more helpful as an experience, for an individual than it is maybe to think that by doing that, you're going to end up getting a letter from that. So I think that's part of the problem. If you do that thinking you're going to get a letter from that, and that's going to be one of your letters, you may really be disappointed. There are not that many telemetry rotations I found where I feel like they really get to know you. A lot of it is observational. And so it's even less, even less than something where you would be in contact with them face to face. So, I mean, you guys can tell me if anybody's had rotations that have been seemingly different from that, but there's only a few that I have really think about. One is a medicine one, and one is a pathology one that I think are valuable. But I've seen a lot of stuff that I don't think is really worth much of anything. The other point was
research related stuff. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting. So you know what? It depends on the specialty. It depends on the specialty is what I would say. You can look at, there's data from the match that looks at how many research projects individuals were involved in. Specifically, it will go to non-US IMGs of people who matched and who didn't match. So, did you have 1 research project? Did you have 2? Did you have 3? Did you have 4? Did you have more than 5? And then it will also, in a separate way, look at publications or, scholarly activity, which would include like abstracts, publications, book chapters, that sort of stuff. Not very many people have a lot of research experience. There's plenty of people that get into programs that have 0 research experience. Now, if you want to get into urology, if you want to get into, certain areas, they care a lot about it. But for most people, no. for family medicine, for internal medicine, for pediatrics, research does not make up a big component of your application. So I wouldn't fret about it. I do think that demonstrating scholarly activity in some way is important. And when you do look at people who demonstrate that, in general, it's hard to know what to make of it. They usually do have a better chance of getting, of succeeding with their applications, but they also may just be overall stronger candidates. So it's hard to tease out how much their match or their greater match success is in any way due to all these publications, or is it just due to, in general, you know, they had stronger letters, stronger scores, you know, stronger grades, all those kinds of things. And additionally, they also had more publications. So it's very hard to tease out how important that is. But there are specialties, without question, where publications seem to be much more important than others. And I think it also depends on whether or not you're looking for a community program, which is what most IMGs are going to be. Even if you want university, you're probably going to have to really think that community is where you're going to end up. So it is very much different if you're looking at university programs, you know, versus community programs. And so since there are not a lot of IMGs that are actually going to find themselves in university programs, it almost becomes, I think, somewhat of a moot point.
I think those are important questions, and I have finished most of my questions, all of my questions for that matter. So let's say, you know, let's discuss a little bit about, you know, what you are offering and how can people find you, how can people work with you. And at the same time, if you can outline, you know, what the success story has been last year. We have shared it in our LinkedIn page. People who are interested, either you can visit my page or you can visit Dr. Parker's page, and you can find the data there. It's remarkable. I'm so happy. It's a well-deserved, actually, success, Dr. Parker. It didn't come as a surprise to me, because like you are a highly esteemed physician, you have a lot of leadership qualities and strengths and experiences, and that success didn't come as a surprise to me. So, you know, for those people, there are so many people who approach me, you know, individually to link you with you. So, you know, just out of fairness, it would be great if you can tell them how can they easily work with you, how can they find you, and what are the things you offer and things like that.
Sure. So I'll be brief. So I started doing this really intensively almost 3 years ago. And so that's been my life. Helping fellowship candidates, helping residents. I started out trying to help a few people get into medical school, but that kind of wasn't my cup of tea. I really enjoyed people that were a little more advanced in their progression. It's just a whole different set of individuals trying to help get into medical school. So I do all residency, and actually over the time it's gotten to be more and more fellowship applicants too, which is a nice mix for me. In the beginning, I had, as those of you who know me will know, that I had a lot of Ethiopians in my program, and I think that's, you know, kind of why I ended up here anyway. But over the course of the last couple of years, I've really expanded from having many Ethiopians to still having a large number of Ethiopians that I work with. But now I have people from really all over the world. Which is kind of interesting. I mean, yes, of course, there's the Pakistanis and the Indians, but I have people from Colombia, I have people from France, I have people from really from Ireland, from, you know, some of them were transplanted from other countries, other places in the Middle East, Turkey. I had a whole bunch of Turkish people this year. So it's actually exciting to me to see different groups, different cultures and all that. I work with most of the people that I work with them on their entire ERAS application, you know, in terms of packages, so that they work with me on their personal statement, their ERAS application, and their interview skills. Before I started this, I actually got certified in interview coaching because I wanted to improve my skills. I had interviewed for many, many years, obviously for my program, but also as someone who did a lot of corporate interviews for my hospital. And I liked interviewing, and I felt like I could learn something more about it. So I'm someone who takes courses and, you know, tries to learn more. And so I did that before I sort of embarked on this. And that was actually a very helpful thing to me. So I definitely enjoyed teaching people how they can be better for their interviews. What can I tell you? Last year, It's kind of grown over the last couple of years. I started out as a different company. I was called IMG Specialist. I rebranded last year because I really wanted to be more inclusive. And so My Application Coach, which I thought was kind of a good name, and nobody else had thought of it, or it wasn't taken, so that was another advantage. And so that's where you'll find me at myapplicationcoach.com. Last year, I helped 105 people get residencies and fellowships. That was very nice. That was up from the year before. I think the year before that I had 91 or something. So I wanted to consistently increase. About half of those people last year were still Ethiopian. So I think I had 53 Ethiopians that ended up with residencies last year. So, and they were from, people from all over, from many different specialties, not all specialties, because I don't necessarily work with people, but I had people in medicine, family medicine, pediatrics, surgery, urology, radiology,
dermatology.
Dermatology, that was probably the one and only. But urology, I had a female last year from Colombia who ended up with the urology match. Yes, that was very exciting. And then fellowships, in various different, it depends every year. But I really enjoy what I'm doing. I put a lot of effort into it. I enjoy working with people from all over and trying to help you, because I do have some appreciation of how hard this is and how much you put into it, in many, many different ways, in time, in money, and all of that. And so I've always felt like it was my job to try to do the best I could. And I only ask two things of my applicants: that they'll work as hard as I will, and that they'll be honest with me. No lies. Tell me the truth. I can handle it. And we always figure out a way to, whatever your circumstances is, I'll be honest with you, and I'll tell you, how we can address red flags if there are red flags. But I think I'm pretty direct. I tell people like it is. You don't hire me so I can sugarcoat things. That's kind of who I am.
Yeah, let me give a little bit of a testimony. I will read this question for you. So, Yorita Barra, thank you. That was very helpful. I recently booked your package for personal statement review, ERAS application, and interview preparation, but it doesn't specify the available dates. Could you explain how it works? We'll go to that, but let me say a few words about Dr. Parker. So, Dr. Parker, I met her when I was applying my residency. For my residency, I went to Atlanta. I went to her center. At the end of the day, I didn't match there. I matched somewhere else. But I had a very beautiful interaction in person. But following, the past 3 years, we have been working together. I have been inviting her multiple times, and she was dedicating her valuable time to come and discuss the most important things with us. So it has helped a lot of Ethiopians as well as other IMGs, I believe. So Dr. Parker, the reason why I say this is not just because Dr. Parker asked me to promote or anything. So her work by itself is a promotion. I don't need to promote her services. But from what I know, let me tell you guys. So this year, when people had issues with their visas and things like that, distance Dr. Parker has gone to help those candidates is really beyond words to me, because she has contacted the Georgian senator to help with this. She has contacted the ambassador, the American embassy ambassador. She has also communicated with the Ethiopian embassy in DC to help candidates. Who would do this? I mean, you guys paid for just spending an hour or so or a couple of sessions with her, but you didn't hire her just to go this far to help you with your visa and everything. So this is a reflection and a testament about who she is as a person. She's a caring figure. And I would like to acknowledge this, Dr. Parker, and I would like to thank you in the name of all those candidates which you tried to the best of your abilities to help them secure their residency position, and not only that, to help them secure their visa so that they would be able to travel to the United States. So thank you so much. I have a very big respect from the heart. So guys, I mean, it's not just like any other ordinary service. Dr. Parker is very professional. So you need to be honest, like she mentioned, and you have to work hard with her if you sign up eventually. And then that way, you can elevate your, experiences and opportunities and chances to match into U.S. residency or fellowship. So thank you, Dr. Parker. It really means a lot.
I did my best this year, guys. I did my best. I wrote lots of letters. I wrote many letters to senators, my senators, to the Ethiopian ambassador. I don't think we were that successful, sadly, but I think we got maybe a few people that wouldn't have otherwise got interviews, and who then, got their visas.
That means a lot. Nobody would do this. Not even myself. I never tried that. So you are the one who did it, and we really appreciate it. It means a lot. It means a lot. So it's not about. I know Dr. Parker is not doing this just for the sake of earning money. It's not. It's just a passion. It's just a passion of helping others. So I think, whoever can afford these services, go for it. Believe me, it's a wise investment. Just work with her, whether you are Ethiopian or from any other nation around the world. I think it will elevate your experiences and applications. I strongly suggest you work with her if you can. If not, she is investing much of her time and she's giving you all this information for free. So you can look into all the past videos. We had almost now about 7 sessions, so it's a lot of information loaded in those videos. So you can always review. They are available on my YouTube page. They are also available on my LinkedIn page, so you can go back and watch all those sessions I had with Dr. Parker if you cannot afford signing up. But if you can, it's a wise investment. Don't hesitate. Don't think twice. I am strongly suggesting it. So you can go ahead and work with Dr. Parker. So if you can address this question, which is
yes, I can address that, and I can address a few others if there's anybody that has any. So listen, when you booked a package, you got an email from me the same day that you booked that package. And it's an email that has many different sections on it that you click. And one of the things that you can click on, if you still have that email, is it will tell you exactly how to schedule your sessions. You have absolute control over that. You have to make sure that you have, that you register and that you have an account. And it has to be in the same email address that you use to make your payment. And once you do that, you will be able to go to personal statement and you will be able to see all of my calendar and what's available, and you pick whatever is helpful for you. It makes no sense for me to schedule things for people because I don't know your schedule. And this way you have, you have a lot of latitude. I make myself available Monday through Saturday. And so there is, and there are hours that, are both in the morning, which would correspond to, 5 o'clock, let's say, in Addis, all the way to things that are later in the evening. I also understand that sometimes the connections just don't go our way. I've sometimes had to just, we had to reschedule because connectivity was just an issue, and I understand all those things.
Yes, and the other thing is, people need to understand this, as time goes on. When do you sign up? If you need to sign up, I think the time is now, because it's almost August. And then when you push and procrastinate and overthink about stuff, the application would be in front of you and people start scrambling. And the issue is that, you may not be able to find the right timing to work with Dr. Parker. So instead of scrambling at the 11th hour and send us personal message, please help me, sign up with Dr. Parker kind of stuff at the 11th hour. Just think about it, make a wise decision, and if you have to start working with her, start working with her. The time is now. Don't delay it, because you need time to craft your personal statement, to go through it time and again and make it as best as possible. So I think, you need to sign up and start, working with her at the earliest possible time. Thank you for this helpful session. Quick question: how can candidates address the step 2 fail attempts on their personal statement?
Okay, so this is one of those where you have, I'm glad you asked the question, because when you have a failure, a significant red flag like that, it's better, you have to address it. You have to address it somewhere. You have two places you can address it. You can either address it in your personal statement, or you can address it in your impactful experience part of the ERAS application. Those are the two, the only two places that that really can go. In your personal statement, when you mention things like this, I tend not to want to dwell on it. I don't really want to hear a whole lot about it, okay? But I think that, for instance, one can say something like, in addition to, in addition to my successes or whatever, or in addition to something, there have also been I've had some setbacks. And you just describe it as a setback that you overcame, and and that you can say that if it most of the time these things occur during circumstances that people take the exam when they sort of know they shouldn't, they're not really prepared, they don't have the money to reschedule it, to retake it, or there's some extenuating circumstance that interrupts their life and they go ahead not with the best judgment and take the exam anyway, and then they fail it, and then you got to explain it. So I would say you don't use too much space to talk about it. See it as a setback, demonstrate how you've overcome that and how it's made you stronger, and don't blame anyone else for it. Take responsibility. Even if, some extenuating circumstance happened, it's still your responsibility to have decided to take the exam. So that's what I can say. Now, you can also put it in the impactful experience part. You have about this, you don't have much space in that, 750 characters. So you can also use that, you could use that in that section as well. But the biggest part is failing to acknowledge it. I've seen people who fail to acknowledge things like this in their application.
I think that's important. That's important to just admit that you had a setback from the get-go, and then people wouldn't have reason to argue with you, right? So because you said it before they can raise it as an issue. So I think that's a good point.
Probably. The other thing I would just point out about that, and this is just something else, is that if you have those, you really need to think about the specialty that you're applying into. And when you look, now that we have Residency Explorer, which, if you don't know, is an amazing resource that you can now see the scores that programs accept and whether they accept people who have failures. And so there's no point in applying to a program that takes 0 people with failures. You're just spending money unnecessarily and needlessly. So use your, you have to face it. That's what happened. And then you have to use the data that you have to then make, smart, strategic choices moving forward.
Yes. What matters the most at the end of the day is getting an opportunity to train in the US. So don't waste your money, by applying to places who are not going to consider you from the beginning. So that's a good and valuable point. Probably a last question I'll take would be this one, Dr. Parker, and I'll leave the floor to you to give us a closing remark. So Dr. Renatan says, thank you, Dr. FSH and Dr. Parker, for all that you do. My question is, have you ever had a person that worked with you that eventually matched into a psychiatry residency program?
I did. I've worked with very few people. It seems like this year, as you know, psychiatry presented opportunities. Psychiatry has gotten to be easier for non-US IMGs, for IMGs in general, to get into psychiatry programs. So now it seems like people are flooding into psychiatry programs, whereas before there really was a small subset of IMGs that really looked at psychiatry as something that they wanted to do. So I haven't had much experience with it. And the individuals that I've worked with have not been Ethiopians, but I think if you have a good story and you have an interest in it, then I think it's a very viable thing for people to look at as an option. So yeah, I would promote people going into psychiatry for sure. And it has become one of those specialties that I think is a reasonable specialty to consider, if your story fits with it, right?
I think, especially if those people have experiences in psychiatry from home country, for example, a person who has been trained as a psychiatrist who would like to come to the US, maybe they may have better chances, right? Just it's common sense. So I think you need to focus on those things. I had one question: if someone had the opportunity to either do observership or take step 3, and had to prioritize, which one would you advise to prioritize more? Okay, I think the question looks like it's the step 3 versus observership.
Yeah. Well, here's what I say. For you to take step 3, you got to get out of Ethiopia, right? So you got to get your B1, B2 visa. If you get what? If you get your
yeah.
If you get your visa, then while you're here, you should spend 2 weeks doing an observership as well. And it shouldn't be either or. It should be both of those things. There is a lot of data that shows that, at least with certain programs, step 3 makes a difference. They're favorably inclined to people who take step 3. Because it means that during your internship, you are not going to be worried about that damn exam, which people always worry about, and they want their schedules changed, and they don't spend time worrying about the specialty they're training in. They're focused on that step 3 exam. And sadly, this year, this year I've had three individuals who have contacted me because they got kicked out of their programs because they did not pass their step 3s as IMGs. Now, one of them just did it late. I mean, she didn't meet the deadline. And a lot of times now in the contracts that programs have, they specify that you have to have passed your step 3 by the end of your first year. And if you don't pass it, they sometimes they write a contract in such a way, which is really stupid in my opinion, but they write the contract in such a way that their hands are kind of tied. Then when somebody doesn't pass it, they have no choice but to let them go because they're not fulfilling their contract. But I saw that, and that's very sad to see that happen. So, and I do tell people, get your step 3 done if at all possible. But I know for many of you, you're not in this country, you can't take step 3. But if you can come to this country, you might as well try to get both things done. And if you can get an observership for 2 weeks, even if it's not a month, 2 weeks, while it's not optimal, it could still, if you do a fantastic job, you can still get a strong letter from a 2-week rotation.
Thank you, Dr. Parker. It's really sad, actually. Oh my God. So, I mean, you don't pass the step 3 means you get kicked out in every program, or it depends from program to program?
It depends on the leniency of the program.
Okay.
And but I have now seen it 3 times this year. I got called, I get these requests from people for all sorts of different things who have gotten kicked out of programs and stuff like that because I do that kind of work. And yeah, 3 people this year who had gotten kicked out of programs. One who had passed the step 3, but had not passed it in the time frame that she was supposed to.
Oh, wow. That's very unfortunate.
Sort of like you can't treat, you have to treat everybody equally, right? So they were going to make an exception for her. Then it was the next person to make an exception with, and the next, and the next, and the next. So I don't know why, but programs have become, they have become much more, it's become more of a thing lately with step 3.
Who knows? Maybe they're looking for an excuse and they got this and then you are fired.
I don't know, but
very unfortunate. Dr. Parker, thank you so much. I have taken much of your time, 20 minutes past from our proposed plan. I apologize for that. But anyway, like all the time, like I say all the time, it's very informative, it's educational. And I am also learning a lot of new stuff whenever I have this beautiful conversation with you. And thank you for being kind. Thank you for being so helpful. And thank you for being available to every one of us. So I really appreciate it. So just, take the floor. Whatever you would like to say at the end, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Just good luck to everybody. You worked hard. Just keep working at it. Just, every day work on your application. And if you're not ready, if this isn't the year that you're going to apply, then work on yourself for the next year. One of the things that I always find sad is that when somebody comes to me and they didn't match the year before, and I say, well, what's different this year? And if they say nothing, you know, it's that PDSA thing, right? Keep improving yourself. Keep improving yourself. Get engaged. Do other things. Your application should, even now, even if you apply now and you start getting interviews, I don't care. I want you to continue to consider, what if you don't match?
Yes.
Okay. What if you don't match? How, if I talk to you in June of next year, is your application going to be better this time around? So instead of getting 4 interviews, you could get 8 interviews. How are you going to do that?
Yes, that's it. That's the key. This is not going to be the end of the world. The fact that you started, submitting your ERAS application doesn't mean you are like guaranteed you'll be matching. There is a chance that you may find out come March next year, 2027, you may find out you haven't matched. That means in about 3 to 4 months, then you need to prepare for another new application. And that amount of time is going to be so limited to show progress in your application.
Right.
You have to do it again next year. So this is a very important, lesson for every one of us who are applying, for every one of you who is in this process. Keep doing what you are doing, as if you're not gonna be matched this year. You're not being negative, but you are being, it's being having a contingency plan.
Mhm.
If things are not going the way they should be, or you hope they would go. So thank you again, Dr. Parker.
Welcome.
I wish you all the best. So probably if I have any other questions, and maybe like, in the middle of the season, if we have to, discuss about some issues related to interview preparation and things like
There
that.
you go. We'll be back for interviews. We'll be back for interviews. Okay.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Parker. Enjoy the rest of your day. Okay. Have a blessed day. Bye.
Okay. Bye.
All right. All right. Thank you. Wow, that's very informative, very helpful, and I'm so glad so many of you have joined me on LinkedIn as well as YouTube and Facebook. And this program is directly actually posted in, it will be available immediately on my LinkedIn page. It's going to be also automatically available on my YouTube channel. Those of you who haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, go ahead and subscribe, and we'll continue doing what we are doing. And I hope everyone will be successful in the upcoming application season, and I wish you all the best. እንግዲህ እግዚአብሔር ይርዳችሁ። ባጭሩ እግዚአብሔር ከእናንተ ጋር ይሁን። እግዚአብሔር ያግዛችሁ። የልባችሁ ሀሳብ ሁሉ ይሳካ። ሁላችሁም ሰክሰስፉል ሆናችሁ እንግዲህ ነገ ጠዋት ደግሞ ሌሎችን እንደምታግዙ እርግጠኛ ነኝ። ይህን እንድናደርግ ደግሞ እግዚአብሔር ይርዳን። ያው ለሀገራችንም ለሕዝባችንም ለዓለምም የሚበቃ ደግ ስራ ሰርተን እንድናልፍ እግዚአብሔር ይርዳን ማለት እወዳለሁ። ሪኮሜንዴሽን ሌተር ጻፍልን ምናምን የምትሉኝ ሰዎች አላችሁ። ቀደምም ጠቀስ አድርጌዋለሁ። ከኔ ጋር እኔ አስተማርኳችሁ፣ ከኔ ጋር በተለያየ መንገድ የሰራችሁ ሰዎች ከሆናችሁ ምንም ሄዚተንሲ የለኝም። ኤቭሪዋን ኦፍ ዩ ነው ሰው ማገዝ ስለምፈልግ ነው መጀመሪያውንም እዚህ አቫይለብል የሆንኩት ማለት ነው። ስለዚህ ማቀውን ሰው በፍጹም በተአምር ሪኮሜንዴሽን ሌተር አልጽፍልሽም ብዬ እንደማልመልስ የታመነ ነው። በዚህ ማንም አያማኝም። ካላወቅኳችሁ ግን ፕሊዝ በቃ ዶንት ፑት ሚ ኢን ዳት ዲፊካልት ሲቹዌሽን ዌር አይ በቃ አይደለ የሚያስጨንቅ ሁኔታ ውስጥ አትክተቱኝ ማለት ነው። ዶንት ሜክ ሚ ፊል ባድ አባውት ኢት። ምክንያቱም ሳላቃችሁ ጻፍልን ምናምን ስትሉ አይ ዊሽ አይ ካን ሄልፕ ዩ። ግን ቅድም ዶክተር ፓርከር ሆነስትሊ ነው የነገረችን። ኢንዲስክሪሚኔትሊ የሚጽፍ ሰው ሌተር በቃ ይታያል ማለት ነው። ለኢትዮጵያዊ ሁሉ ጽፎ ጀነሪክ ማንንም የማይጠቅም ይሆናል አት ዘ ኤንድ ኦፍ ዘ ዴይ ማለት ነው። ሁሉን ለማስደሰት ተብሎ ግን ማንንም የማይረዳ ይሆናል አት ዘ ኤንድ ኦፍ ዘ ዴይ። ስለዚህ ፌር መሆን አለብን። የኔንም ፐርስፔክቲቭ እንድታዩልኝ በአክብሮት ለመጠየቅ ነው። በተረፈ ግን ምናልባት አሁን ዶክተር ፓርከርን ባትሆን ሌላ ሰው እንደዚህ በዚህ ውስጥ ያለፈ ሰው ካለ ጋብዛቸውና ቲክታክ ላይ ምናምን ላይቭ ገብተን እናንተንም ላይቭ እያስገባናችሁ እንድንመልስላችሁ የምትፈልጉ ካላችሁ በደስታ እንድትሳተፉ ማመቻቸት ይችላለሁ። we can go live on TikTok. I believe all of you have a TikTok account, right? እስቲ ጻፉልኝ። የቲክታክ አካውንት የላችሁም እንደ ኢትዮጵያ ሐኪሞች? እስቲ ጻፉልኝ። ቲክታክ አካውንት አላችሁ የላችሁ? ምክንያቱም ሊንክዲን ብዙም ዩዘር ፍሬንድሊ አይደለም፣ ብዙ ሰው አይገባበትም። ኢንትሮዲውስ ቢደረግም ብዙ ሰው እንትን አይመጣም። ከእንደገና ደግሞ አንለስ አይ ሴንድ ዩ ሊንክ እዚህ ጋር ሴሽኑ ላይ እንድትገቡ ለማድረግ ካልሞከርኩኝ በስተቀር እንደ ገስት ገብታችሁ በድምፅ እንደፈለጋችሁ ጥያቄያቸውን ማቅረብ አይችሉም። እና ለእያንዳንዱ ሰው በየቀኑ የሚቀርብልኝን ጥያቄ ፐርሰናሊ በቴክስት ከመመልስ ይልቅ የሆነ ቀን ዴዲኬት አድርጌ ላይቭ ብገባና ላይቭ ኩዌስችን ኤንድ አንሰር ብናረገው ይመቸኛል። ዋት ዱ ዩ ቲንክ? ጻፉ እንጂ። ኢትዮጵያውያን ሐኪሞች ሪዘርቭድ ነን ታውቃላችሁ አይደል? ሜዲካል ስኩልም ትልቁ ጭቅጭቃችን መልሱ ነው። እያወቃችሁት መልሱን ትህትና እና የላችሁም ቲክታክ አካውንት? ቲክታክ አካውንት ካላችሁ በቃ አንድ ቀን ቲክታክ ላይ የእናንተን ጥያቄ ለመመለስ ዴዲኬት አድርጌ መግባት እችላለሁ። እና እንደዛ አድርገን የምታነሷቸውን ጥያቄዎች ሁሉ ሰፊ ጊዜ ሰጥቼ የምችለውን ያህል አድሬስ ለማድረግ ሞክራለሁ። if you guys are interested in doing that እና ያን እናደርጋለን። በተረፈ እግዚአብሔር ከሁላችንም ጋር ይሁን። እናንተንም እግዚአብሔር ይርዳችሁ። ሰላም ሁኑልኝ። በቃ ባይ ባይ። እሺ፣ መልካም ጊዜ። እና ወደ 9 ነው 10 እንትኖች አሉ ኢንክሉዲንግ ማይ ኦን ፐርሰናል ጆርኒ ኤክስፔሪየንስ ከሐኪም ኪሩቤል ወይም ከኪሩቤል ጋር ያደረኩትን ኢንተርቪው ጨምሮ ሌሎችን ቪዲዮዎች አሉ። 9 ወይ 10 ደርሰዋል። አሁን ከዚህ ጋር ወደ 11 ነው የሚሆነው። ሁሉም በጣም ኢንፎርማቲቭ ነው፣ በጣም ዲቴይልድ ነው፣ በጣም ብዙ ኢንፎርሜሽን ሎድድ ነው። እና ያላያችሁ ሰዎች እየገባችሁ ጊዜ ቢፈጅም ቀስ ብላችሁ እዩት። በእውነት በጣም ይጠቅማችኋል። እና አንዳንዶቹ ስለ ኢንተርቪው ስለምናምን የሚያወሩት መቆየት ይችላሉ፣ አሁን ኢንተርቪው ሲዝን ስላልሆነ። ግን ኢንትሮዳክተሪ የሆነውን ሴሽን ማየት ብትጀምሩ በጣም ይጠቅማችኋልና ዱ ዛት። እሺ፣ ኦኬ፣ ዛት would be a great idea። እና ቲክታክ ላይ ቁጭ ብለን ገስት እየገባችሁ በደንብ መጠየቅ ትችላላችሁ። እንደዛ አደርጋለሁ። ሰሞኑን አሳውቃችኋለሁ። በቃ አይ ዶንት ኖ እንግዲህ ፎሎ አድርጉኝ ቲክታክም ላይ። ሰላም ሁኑ። ባይ ባይ። መልካም ጊዜ። እግዚአብሔር ይርዳችሁ። All right, so how do we end this thing? All right. መልካም ጊዜ። ጆይን ስላደረጋችሁኝ ከልብ ያመሰግናለሁ።